Welcome to the Deep Dive Podcast. Becoming the dad God has called you to be takes a deeper dive. Dads too often stay at surface level. So let's dive deep into today's podcast.
Welcome back to the Dad Deep Dive Podcast. We are so honored that you have invested your time to join us for the Dad Deep Dive Podcast. And we know that if you have followed with us through the first 4 episodes, then your life has been enriched. And today it will be no different. Today, Jeff sits down with Hal Bowman. Hal Bowman is the founder of Teach Like a Rock Star. His outlook on parenting and teaching is unparalleled, and it is something that I know you will be greatly touched with. This conversation between Jeff and Hal is powerful. There are so many good things in it, and honestly, I just want you to get to the podcast. Again, I'm Seth, I'm your host, and I'm so thankful that you have joined us. So enjoy the podcast.
All right, Hal Bowman. Man, this is exciting that you are here. I was telling Seth that this is the first time that we've kind of switched roles a little bit.
It is.
And so I am honored that you're here. You know, I know you're familiar with Dad University. I mean, you're one of our alumni.
Yeah, I love it.
And so to actually have you now on this stage, getting ready for Dad University online, I can't imagine what our listeners are going to glean from this conversation, man.
I hope it's good, but you know what, brother? In that Dad U space and sitting in that room with all those men, there's just something powerful. Like there's something. It's inexplicable, just the feeling, the vibe of the room when you have men all sharing the same passion and making a difference in the lives of their kids and serving their families and the communities, all together at the same room, same time, on the same cause, the same mission, the same place. Dude, I love it. I want to get back to people in the room together. Yeah.
Well, you know, your title today is Dad Be the One.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, you spent 2 decades. That's a long time in the classroom.
Not as long as you, but it's a long time.
Well, yeah. But you were 2 decades in the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I spent a little over a decade in the classroom before I went to the dark side.
Right.
You know, so 34 years altogether. But then you became, you left education as far as in the building.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, you're still an educator, once a teacher, always a teacher. So now you're teaching teachers, teaching administrators, teaching mostly educators all over the country and the world. And so tell me about that. I mean, Teach Like a Rock Star.
Yeah, so you know what it was, man, is I think the turning point was I had a class. I've taught a ton of stuff. I was a band director, a biology class sponsor. I don't want to say teacher because I don't want to insult any biology teachers calling what I was doing teaching. So I was kind of sponsoring this class where we were sort of talking about biology. And there's English and language arts. And then I got into leadership programs. And I had a class called Teen Leadership. And one of the sections we used for kids coming back to our high school campus from an alternative learning placement, they got in trouble and went to alternative school or boot camp or DAP. You know, it was and they're not bad kids. They're just bad criminals. They got caught, you know, whether it was experimenting with weed or fighting or cursing, whatever. And so when they bring them back, they would give them to me. And my job was to integrate these kids into school. And the secret was just I would get them connected with someone, a teacher, or a group, something. You know, maybe it was a big, strong kid. He didn't know about the powerlifting team. It's just I was getting him somehow engaged in school and connected with people. And I had an administrator who was a huge fan of what I was doing. And she says, hey, I have a junior high I'm the principal at. Can you come over and tell my teachers what you do and how you do it? And, you know, I never really thought about that because – you know, for you, even as a coach, it was like kind of natural building these relationships. I never thought, how do I do that? I don't know, just what I do. And so I really analyzed it that summer and kind of figured this whole process out. I mean, what does proximity look like and how I relate to kids in terms of distance and space and how I connect with kids when I first meet them and how do I look at them? What's the physical? Do I, you know, is a hand on the shoulder, shake hands, bumping knuckles, like whatever the thing is. And so I really analyzed it. I went and told them how I do what I do, and it was really cool. And then more and more people started to call, and then and I thought, well, let me see if other people want this. And I at the time I had this huge 1987 hairdo, and I thought, you know, this whole Teaching a Rock Star thing came about. And the rock star wasn't like how to, it was more about not the teacher being the rock star, but how can we create a classroom environment that feels like an event? Like, what would you line up for? I remember you used to talk about that with your teachers. Why would a kid run for your class?
Yeah.
And I remember growing up in the 80s and going to see, you would have to camp out for tickets. Well, why would a kid camp out for tickets to my class? Like, what would that feel like?
Right.
And that was kind of the driving force and the impetus for creating this whole thing that I do today.
Well, and you got this new program, or your new program, because you've been doing it for a while now, called Be the One.
Sure.
The most recent. So what is that? What does that mean?
My whole idea is I realized pretty early on that we could, with the right ingredients in the recipe, we really can shift campus culture dramatically in a single day. I know a lot of people have 5-year plans, which is awesome, but I'm interested in 5 hours. Like, what can we do that's so impactful today? So that's the goal. So I show up on campus, and typically it's a secondary campus. And in the early morning, when it's dark outside, we meet with teachers, and the kids come, and I work with groups of kids. And these are all kind of leadership personality kids, kind of alpha type. And that might be athletic team captains, drill team captains, student council kids, but also what I like to call kids that are leaders of unsanctioned and organizations on campus, non-sponsored, non-UIL activities. And so I get all these kids together, and then after school, we put our teachers and administrators and those leadership kids all together in the auditorium, and we have really heavy conversations in front of each other. And teachers talk about why they're there, what they want for their kids, and how much they love their kids. They talk about it openly. And kids talk to their teachers about, here's how you're changing my life right now. Here's how my life is different because of your class every day. And when we have that kind of honesty and vulnerability and trust and love, and it's just a powerful moment. And because everybody's a leader on campus, the rest of the school just kind of follows in suit.
Man, that's powerful. And I've been privy to be a part of that, both as a principal and then also kind of as an observer. So, obviously I've known you for a long time, and we've done some things together, and you've motivated me to be a better leader and encouraged me. Now, the latest thing, or during this pandemic, which has been a phenomenal opportunity for men to get together, called Men in Ed. Yeah. And I was talking just the other day. I'm on this Facebook group that I remember. Just over a year ago, you were talking to me. What do you think about this? What do you think about this Men in Ed? And what do we call it? And and I thank God that you launched that, because just the other day I was talking to a group of guys on Voxer, all guys that I met through Men in Ed that I would have never ever met if it wasn't for that network. And from that has come a podcast.
Yeah, lots of podcasts. But for you guys,
for me, and that's just one. And that was the question that was posed. Can you imagine how many podcasts and Voxer groups and books and other Facebook groups that have been spawned by this one group, Men in Ed?
It's powerful, man. When I started that thing, and I remember talking to you about it, I really had a lot of deep concerns, because especially in the way our society, our culture is set up right now, it's almost dangerous to talk about doing something exclusively just for men, especially in the education setting, because it's it's a female-dominated profession and the reason I started it, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but some of the motivating factors for me was looking at the numbers, just straight data. Less men are coming into the profession, and more men are leaving faster than women, and our numbers yearly, you can see the decline. And what's disconcerting for me is right now we have so many kids without an influential father figure in their life. And I want people to know, I'm not saying a single mom can't be amazing and raise amazing children. I'm not saying two moms in a relationship can't raise amazing. I'm sure, but I do know this. When we look at the numbers, the odds are stacked in the favor of kids having a positive influential male role model in their life serving as a dad. And I'm not talking about the father. I'm talking about as a dad. And that dad might be in their home. That dad might be in a classroom. That dad might be on a football field and leading a scouts at the YMCA, at church. But I do know that we're come to a time in our nation's history, our kids, our society, our kids are desperate to have that dad in their life.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, the Men in Ed was just a step in that direction.
Well, it's obvious because there's nearly 800 men in there, or 850 or close to it. Mm-hmm. And the need was obvious by the level of participation in that group and the outgrowth of that group.
Yeah.
And so
that's the cool thing with the group. Like, as much as I would love to see this swell of overwhelming activity, and that's kind of what I expected, but, my ideas are always awesome in theory. But when it comes down to it, typically that never happens. What happens is all these little offshoot and there's got to be at least a dozen books that are being written or have been written just coming out of that group. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how many podcasts. I mean, it's and just the conversation and book studies and all the little things that happened as a result, like these tentacles coming off the hub of it all. It's been awesome.
Yeah, the peripheral is unbelievable.
It really is.
And so, we gave you kudos on our first podcast and on our first episode about the parking space on the Texan Connection, and the three of us all said we wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Men in Ed and Hal Bowman. So you are okay. So you're teacher, band director, motivational speaker, leadership guru. But I know you. And I know you feel the same way, that your two most important roles right now in your life are husband and father or dad.
Yep.
And so that's why we're here today. And so that the be the one, makes sense as you were talking about, the dads we have, the men that we need that influence in our schools, because quite frankly they're not getting that necessarily at home.
Right.
So in Suit Up Ministries, we want to encourage those dads that are already in the game to continue, because who's telling those guys they're doing a good job? Mm-hmm. I mean, when was the last time someone stopped you and said, "Hey, Hal, man, thanks for being the dad. Thanks for doing what you're supposed to do."
The only person ever has been you.
So that's one thing.
Right.
Okay. So the other part of it is encourage those dads that are to get in the game that are not present. So the idea, for me, my understanding about being the one, when you're talking to administrators and teachers and even students, is that why not you be the most influential person in that person's life? Why not you be I've heard you say this 100 times. Why not you be the one? You wanted to be the one.
I think everybody has that in them. I think there's at least a cell left of everybody's human being that wants to be the most positive, influential force in the lives of other people. I know it's in there. I think some people, because they don't access it and they get disappointed and overlooked, they just kind of forget, but it's still in there. And I think the key is, especially for men, is to access that. And the only way I believe to do that is through network and conversation and community and coming together. Like, that's another thing. Like, I think we forget as human beings, man, we're very tribal people. It's important to have connection, and we just don't have opportunity. So we have to create that. That's something I've been working on in my own personal life outside of professional and everything else, is just reestablishing relationships with men. It's so important. I think we come into this idea as a father, and maybe it was based on fear for me. I was terrified about being a bad dad, poor dad, because I've seen so many examples, and the way you justify that example is you think, well, that guy he did as best as he could. But when you have your kids, that doesn't work anymore, because you think, well, what if the best I can do isn't good enough?
Just not good enough. That's right.
So you go overboard, and what tends to happen with men is they're so focused on that role, they sacrifice other important things like relationships with other men and friendships and community of men. But that's the fuel. And that's where you get better and have conversations. People hold you accountable and talk about goals and talk about what you want to accomplish and your mission and your own core values. And that's where you talk about it. And that fuels you even more to be more focused and be a better dad when you get back in the house. And so that's been my focus lately, just reconnecting with other men and having meaningful conversation.
Well, when you're the teacher, you want to be that teacher that those kids come back and say,
yeah,
Mr. Bowman was the difference.
Everyone.
It's
may not so selfish, we may not, but it's perfect.
Yes.
It's perfect. It shouldn't be any other way.
Right. We may not verbalize that, or even we may not ever share that, but down deep inside, if we're in education and we're driven, and there's so many things, so many seeds we plant that we'll never see come to fruition. Yeah. But the goal is, first of all, is to be the very best we can possibly be. But then we would love for our students to come back one day and give tribute to give credence to what we did, yeah. That we made it, that we all want to make a difference. So today, the translation is with dads is the same thing. We want our kids one day to say, my dad was always there.
Yeah.
My dad, we fail as dads, but my dad was always there. He wasn't perfect. He just like all of us, we fall short. We misread the owner's manual sometimes, or we don't find it, or we can't find it, or we were on the wrong page, or we weren't. But I challenge men sometimes. I go, what would be 3 words that you would want your kids to one day describe you as a dad?
Yeah.
But then also tell me, okay, well, then why? Okay, you can maybe name 3 things, but why would you want them to say those 3 things? So I think isn't that what you mean when you say dad be the one?
Yep. And, in those 3 things, I think it's okay to have different ideas, and it's just like teaching in the classroom. All these kids are different. And when I first started teaching before I had kids, it was these kids would show up and they're really challenging personalities, and I would think, ugh, their parents, please. But when you have your own kids, you realize, oh my gosh, some of these kids just show up on the planet with this personality in place, right? And the parents are doing the best they can. And so with my own kids, they're so, I'm talking opposite ends of the spectrum in every way.
Yeah.
Academically, personality, just what the fears and concerns and, every attitudes, everything is just so completely opposite. So as a dad, I'm constantly thinking about what does this kid need? For example, my daughter is, I haven't thought about this in a long time. My daughter is very reserved. Very focused on safety. She's a rule follower. That's why she does great academically.
So she's like your mom, your wife,
right?
Like her.
Funny Freudian slip. And I remember my wife was she went to a doctor's appointment, and I'm just trying to entertain my daughter at the time, and I want to say she was just barely, maybe 12 or 13, and we used to go walk around the office building, and she says, "I wonder what they do in there," and I thought, okay, here we go. Let's find out. And I open up the office door. I walk right into someone's office, and some lady sitting at the reception. What are you guys doing here? Just because I wanted to say, doesn't be free. Just go ask. And for her, it was like, oh my God, what are we doing? But I just wanted to say, how fun. The boy, he would do that on his own. He wouldn't even look to me. He would have the thought, I wonder what they're doing here. But without looking, he would walk in and say, what are y'all doing here? So knowing what he needs and what she needs are so different. But in my mind, it's just like the classroom. I'm always thinking, if the kid is going to be it in terms of quality of character and who they are and personality, if they're going to be it, they need to see it. So it's more than me talking about it or having these silly conversations at night around the kitchen table. They have to regularly see what it is that I want them to be. I have to show it if I'm going to grow it in that kid daily. So it's always on my mind. Maybe not the forefront, but I'm always conscious of who I am and what I'm doing when they're around.
Wow. Well, I was thinking about, when I was preparing for today, I was thinking about the different topics we could talk about. Yeah. And the topics are endless. But so you shared a few topics, and I thought, and we don't have to cover all these today because, we can do this again.
Yeah.
But, so the importance of the role of men play in today's society. Well, I think we've kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt that, the statistics show. I mean, all you have to do is look at the plethora of ill effects, social, emotional effects of the absentee father.
And I need that data. Because I'm very easily swayed with emotion and anecdotes and stories and news and articles and it's fine. But I want to see the data. Give me the numbers, because that doesn't lie.
Yeah. Yeah. And we list statistics on our website at studentministries.org. And it's, I can't recall them exactly, but it's like 70%, 75% of all juveniles in jail today came from a home of fatherless homes, absentee fathers, teen pregnancies, drug abuse, rape, suicides. Yeah. I mean, it's 2/3. It's, again, like you mentioned before, with a mom and a dad in the house, it's not foolproof. It's not 100%.
Sure, yeah.
But the odds are with you.
Right.
I mean, the poverty, a child is going to continue to grow the cycle of poverty if 20 times greater in a single parent home.
Sure.
And sometimes we want to talk about the issue of poverty. Well, the real issue is the family structure. Right. And I mean, let's just face it. The odds are with two adults, whatever the composite is, two adults is better than one. Yeah. Because you got two opportunities to make income, or one, or someone taking care of
influence and time and reading.
Exactly.
In every area.
Right.
So again, man, And honestly, to be completely honest, I don't talk about those statistics in certain social situations. I'll just keep quiet because I know some people will find it just offensive for whatever reason. And I'm not saying, I'm with you, I'm not saying that just having the dad there solves everything. What I'm saying is we need to provide men with the information so they can get engaged, as you say, get in the game and be positive, be supportive, be influential, and have it in, have an idea articulated. We spend, like, somebody, I have a friend of mine, his wife is a Disney vacation expert. And she talks about the hours that she spends with families designing a vacation to Disney. And I'm thinking to myself, how many hours have they spent designing a childhood? Have they ever sat down and put some notes on a paper and sat with an expert or just the parents together talking about how we're going to raise our children? What is that childhood going to look like? What's our mission? What's our focus? What are our because they do that for Disney. Well, we don't want to miss Space Mountain, and we got to eat at this restaurant. We're going to stay at well, what about the kid? What about the childhood? It's the same thing. Yeah. But we just overlook it.
Yeah, we plan for our careers.
Yep.
We plan for vacations. In some cases we plan for the wedding. Yeah. But not always the marriage.
And if that was happening, and I know it's make-believe, and I'm just, fantasizing about what this world might be, but if two people are engaged in that moment, a husband and wife, in that partnership, now they have a mission, and now they have a purpose together. And now they're on the same page with something that's meaningful. And I think the odds of the family splitting up at that point is dramatically less.
Yeah, yeah. And you and I both know that divorce happens.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, but and I've always said one of the most important things you can do as the father for the kids is to love the wife. But sometimes things happen. Yeah. But you're still the dad, regardless of your relationship with the mom, their mom. You will always be their dad. And what happens is, as well as I do, is often men not only divorce their wife, they divorce the family. Yeah. And those statistics are.
I hear it a lot, and I don't mean to sound callous or just not being sympathetic, but I do mean it when I hear that so well. I really I don't play a role in my kid's life. We're divorced. I'm like, so what? Well, we're our family. Wait, hold on. Just because you got divorced doesn't mean you broke up the family. You can still do family. Yeah. And live over there.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? You can still be a family unit, and you can still do all those things. That's okay. Yeah. In teaching, I saw some amazingly bad, amazingly great divorce situations where I can remember a kid crying in the hallway on the phone, a senior in high school, because mom and dad, and they can't figure it out. They're divorced for 3 years, and they're still arguing. But I can also remember a kid in my classroom. Hey, Bowman, can I use the phone? Yeah, sure, dude. Go ahead. Hey, Mom, because the football game was over at the Pigeon Stadium, I'm just going to stay at Dad's house tonight because it's closer, okay? Okay, cool, bye. It's so easy.
Yeah.
So easy.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes, it becomes just so emotional. And, I've never been there, so I don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do at Dad University, we talk about divorced but devoted, because there are dads that for whatever reason they want to be involved with their kids even though they're divorced.
Yeah.
But they don't know. They don't know how.
Right.
Or there's circumstances that limits their accessibility to their kids, or there's distance between.
Sure.
They live in a different state, but they can still be. We do prison ministry, and we minister to men, and they still are good dads while they're inside the prison.
Sure.
Because they write letters, that continue to fuel the relationship somehow, even behind the walls, and it's even possible.
Yep.
I mean, obviously we want to be, the physical presence, but sometimes there's a lot of men that are physically present, but they're not emotionally present.
Right.
There's sometimes that's even, worse than
for sure
than the physical absence. It leaves almost as much or more scars.
Yeah.
And they just, a non-participating dad is just because you're present, and we talk about that at Dad University too. Present doesn't mean just in the room.
Right.
I mean, you have to, be active.
Right.
Daily active, devoted dad. We talk about. Okay, so what if you are a dad or a father
right.
of teenagers, and you think it's just too late to impact your kids because you've just maybe gone too far?
Man, I have so many examples of that's not true simply by the impact I see teachers have in a classroom when they have a kid for one semester for 45 minutes a day, and the impact that person can have. And first of all, let me say, back to the divorce thing, I think some men, and I think this is just my observation, I've never had this discussion, but it seems to me that when they get married, I don't know anything about kids when I get married. When I get married, I don't know anything about marriage or that kind of relationship. I don't know anything about kids. And what happens when the kids come, typically, not every time, but mom takes 95% of the role now because kids are here. And I'm scared to death because I don't even know how to keep this thing alive, right? How do we even feed this kid?
Right.
And so mom goes into mom mode and that nurturing, that, that God-given thing that they have. And now, if divorce happens somewhere close to that, and dad and they're still doing 5%, and now they're divorced, well, it's really easy to give up the 5%. Let just mom do 100%, rather than saying, okay, I need to pick up 45% of this program. How do I do that? And that's where groups of men come together. Mm-hmm. That's where it's so important to have friendships and meaningful relationships with other men that can direct you to different books and podcasts and videos and organizations and church groups and whatever they need to support to get them to where they need to be. For a kid in their teenage years, I see it all the time, man. I'm telling you, even with my own kids, a professor my daughter has at college, or a guy that my kid met at the skate park who's 38 and he's a doctor, but he still skateboards. And the conversations they have, and what the stuff this guy imparts. Like, I want to send this guy a thank you note. Dude, my kid still talks about that conversation you had that one time 6 months ago. In those, if that happens, I know for sure a dad can have exponential impact on the lives of the kids. The challenge is believing that it's happened, because kids are so good at playing the role of an actor, with the goal of making you think it's not working, making you think it's not getting in there. That's what kids do, especially little boys, especially 14-year-old boys. Okay, whatever. But it's in there. So you just have to believe it and know it. Because even when you shift the kid's trajectory, right, in their life. Right now, it's just a tiny bit. I just put one thought in a kid's head. It just shifts it. You can't see that. It's minuscule. But what I do know is this: over the course of 6 months and a year and 2 and 5 and 10 years and 20 years, and his kid's now in his 30s and 40, he's going to end up in a whole new universe, a whole different world, because that one little nugget that we couldn't even see and maybe didn't even realize we planted in that kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you also mentioned the word or the term toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Now, what is that?
You know what? I think this is such a strange. It's almost as if it's inappropriate. The nature of men. It's almost inappropriate to be a leader, to be assertive. And to have a list of non-negotiables. This is what I stand for. It's almost to have a list of core values serves as the foundation of and I do not negotiate those values. That's who I am. That's what I believe. It's what I stand for. It's almost as if we're at the point where that's a bad thing. And then when you team up, as we are now, with you're a Republican or a Democrat, a conservative or a liberal or what, and we go back and forth, it gets very confusing for men. And I think it's at a time in a man right now in the world, every man really needs to take some time. I do it daily. It's just a few minutes where I get with my journal and I think, okay, what are my list of wants I have in my life? On that list, are there any needs that's not a want? Because I can compromise and negotiate my wants. Well, this is non-negotiable. That's a need. That goes on my needs list. I have a list of 100 core values, and I'm constantly going through those. And these are my 5 right now that I'm focused on. This is the foundation of my life. In that way, when discussions come up about what it means to be a man or masculine, and whether it's toxic or not, it doesn't affect me because I know who I am. I've done the work. I feel great about it. I'm full of integrity. They can have those comforts. Doesn't apply to me though. And they can think whatever they want. I don't know. Yeah. It's okay.
For some reason, if you're passionate, kind of like the Men and Ed thing, if you're passionate about growing men, it is looked upon as being detrimental. To so what are you going to do about XYZ? Well, that's not what we do. We focus on the men. Because first of all, it's neglected, but it's so essential. It's almost like a politically incorrect statement to focus on the role of the dad. Like. Why would you do that? Why can't we encompass the whole everyone? Well, I mean, that's not what but that's not what this ministry does, or that's not what this group of men do. This is, and we're not, for some reason, we're not allowed to, or if we are, it's looked down upon as disparaging against the other gender,
the group, or gender, or whatever, relationships, or races, everything.
Or if you are trying to ask men to stand in the gap, it's kind of like saying because women can't do it by themselves, and that's not the case. We're encouraging men to as we mentioned before, what a powerful thing it would be to stand next to. Thank God women have been doing what, I mean, how many times do you see, the kid on TV that says, thank you, Mom, or thank you, Grandma, or whatever, and maybe 1 out of 4, they say Dad, and I thank God for the auntie or the grandma or the mom who has been there and played both roles, because men don't fulfill their obligations. So we're just saying, let's stand in the gap and be beside the mom, the wife, and to be able to reach and fulfill all the things that we're talking about. To encourage men to be the dad. So
what's fascinating, man? Because again, the odds are there. 50% are divorced. Of those kids that have a dad, the 50% that do, this is totally just observations from being a teacher and thousands of kids. It's not scientific data. But the 50% of kids that have a dad in their life, about half of those are positive and active. So it's 25%. So it's 75% of kids. So in my mind, why would we not focus on men right now if 75% of them we feel like aren't serving their kids? And it's not that we don't want, in terms of this group or a focus on men, to serve. We want to focus on men so they can go out and serve everyone. So our focus isn't serving it. Our focus on men so they can go out and have a positive influence in the lives of everyone.
That's right. That's right. It is, if in fact men took their rightful place in larger percentages to not only be the biological donor or the father, but to move into the dadhood.
Sure.
Then a lot of the social ills that we face today would be, or a lot of the things that we do today would not be replacement. They would be reinforcement. We would, just imagine if what we did at school was simply reinforcing what was happening at home,
right,
instead of asking men and ed to be the replacements. Which, as you mentioned, we need lots of men in our kids' lives.
Sure.
It makes me proud when I think about. I can get even emotional about the men that have been in my kids' lives, besides their dad, that have played a role because we know. I'm getting so excited here. We know how vital that is.
Yeah.
That it often takes more than one, person. It takes the village, so to speak.
Yeah.
So how would you instruct a young man to transition from the father to the dad? How do I begin if I don't know where to start? How do you transition from fatherhood to dadhood?
Yeah. I think that for me, that was that was the scariest part of having kids, is based on my role models in life and my own. I had a father, but I wanted to be a dad, and I just didn't have many examples of that. And what's interesting is last weekend I went to Austin, Texas with a couple of buddies I went to college with. And we were in college together in the late 80s. And the reason we went is because our main professor we had as music majors was dying. And he had been fighting cancer for 5 years now. And he finally decided, you know what, let's just end this thing comfortably. And there's no more fighting, and there's no more the toxic chemo and all the pain and the suffering. Let's just be comfortable, alleviate the pain. And he went to live with his daughters. He has a grown daughter in Austin, and we met there, and he's living there for his, he's probably a few weeks out from, this chapter. And we went there, and we got to sit in the living room of his daughter. His two daughters were there, and they're grown women, and their kids or his grandkids are toddling around, and got to talk for a couple hours, and it was time to go. And it was like the moment where me and these two guys, and we've all had some, interesting lives and successes and achievements we had, and we all got to take a turn to tell them, to say the things that people usually say at a funeral, to say the things at a memorial service. And we got to tell him right to his face. And I love that he got to experience that here. More than that, I love that his daughters got to hear.
Yeah.
And I mean, you talk about emotion and tears, all of us, but especially them. Like, that's my dad they're talking about. And I talked about how, when I became a father, I didn't know what I'm doing. And what do I do in this situation? I remember my wife taking a shower for the first time after we came home from the hospital. And I have the baby, and she's in the shower. And she
5 minutes?
Yeah, I'm just going crying and coughing, and oh my God, she's going to die. And I'm banging on the door, get out here. Something's happening. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I found a counselor, and her recommendation was, you've had lots of dads in your life. You just didn't recognize them. Let's start making a list. And my professor, Mr. Shin, and we started going down Mr. McNone, and baseball coaches and wrestling coaches and, musicians and music teachers and all these classroom and all these men that I had. I realized, all right, I have so many dads. And I think the transition is being focused and conscious and being able to articulate what you want for your kids as a result of your relationship as a dad, if you could have anything, what would that be? I think if men took a moment to spell that out, what do I want for my kid? Like, what do I want for this relationship? Because of my relationship, what do I want to instill in my kid? Who do I want them to be and why? And really get into that. And it's almost as if, and it sounds crazy until you do it, when you're trying to think of all the activities and do this and step 1 and step 2, that's hard. But if you have your purpose and what you want and why you want it and who you need to be for your kids, once you have all that clear, the how to do it just kind of falls into place. When you're so clear on purpose and mission and values and why, and you do that work, how to do it just kind of happens.
That all sounds like one word to me, and that's intentionality.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I mean, to acknowledge that you need to become that dad, that there's a need to be the dad, to heed the calling to be the dad that God calls us to be, but then to be intentional, to be literal, if it means putting it down on paper.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't know how many of us would actually do that, but I mean, I think that would be a great practical, and men are practical a lot of times. Yeah. Like visual. We need a plan.
Yeah.
We plan, like we said before, we plan for everything else. But we don't always plan. You make a plan of action to be a dad. I love also what your counselor told you, and I think that's a great message to our listeners at Dad U online that will hear you speak this morning, or whenever they're listening, about you've had dads in your life.
Yeah.
If you're that person who's listening and your dad wasn't the dad, or you don't either know your dad or you knew your dad but your dad wasn't a contributor for whatever reason, and you're trying to break the cycle.
Yeah.
Maybe you did acknowledge it along the way, but if he didn't, like you said, make that list and then look at the qualities. Why are those men on that list?
Yeah.
So why was Dr.
Shin
on your? Why would he?
Yeah. What it was about him, and I told him this in. He had this way of extending grace when you most needed it, and there's no way there's no way he could. So when you're a music major, you go in for lessons, and to perfect your craft. Well, not perfect, but try to get a little better as a musician, so you can be a better teacher. And I remember being overwhelmed. I didn't have enough time to practice this week, and I'm thinking, man, I don't want to go play in front of this guy because he's going to say, "What are you doing?" I'm going to let him down. I'm going to disappoint him. And I remember getting in there and standing there, and we're talking, and him after a couple of minutes, he goes, "You know what? Let's go get some coffee instead of having a lesson. Come on." And I'm like, we went, had coffee, and just talked about life, and just talked. And the funny thing is this last weekend I told him that, how meaningful it was just to have a conversation, and somehow you knew to extend me grace because I wasn't prepared. Somehow you just innately knew that. And he goes, "Innately? I didn't see you in the practice rooms all week. I knew you didn't practice." Which is even better. Yeah. Instead of him saying that at the time, he didn't need to. Let's go get some coffee and hang out.
Yeah. Well, what a lesson that gave you. Because I know that influenced you on how you taught.
Yeah, tons of grace. Because they're kids, man. Mm-hmm. They're going to mess up.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
And parent.
Yeah.
And parent.
Right. And, so I remember after, with that counselor, I made this, in the session, it's an hour session, we made this list, and okay, and when time's up, and she goes, "Well, thank you so much." I go, "What is it, like same time next week?" She goes, "No, you're done. That's all you need. Just do that. Whatever they gave you, go give that to your kids." Mm-hmm. And so I remember, and my daughter's time was maybe around 2 or 3. And what was really cool about my life at the time was I was teaching school, and my wife had a massage therapy practice. And so she'd be home all day with the kids. Then I came home, and she would go see clients for a couple hours in the evening. So it was just me and my kid, forced, one-on-one. It was perfect. And so every day, that became our thing. Let's go do something, because that's always wanted. I wanted my dad to do something with me. So we got a bike. We got one of those bike seats on the back, and we rode for miles. And there was a house that caught on fire in our neighborhood, and she got fascinated with the firehouse. Let's go to the firehouse. We go up and walk around it, look inside, caught on fire. She was fat. We go there every day. And then she had these different trees she wanted to go see. And it was because I wanted to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not always what you did. It's just the idea that you were together, that you were present.
Right.
You were intentional, you were present. So,
let me just say, dude, even in my teaching in my classroom, when we go and mentor kids, I did some leadership programs. We also mentoring programs where I have seniors in high school taking care. We see little, third graders once a week. And we would do an activity with them. And that was always the message to my seniors in high school. Listen, it's not about the activity. The activity is just to disguise the conversation you're having with the kid. Yes, we're playing a game, but really, here's what the message is. So it's doing to initiate experiences and conversation and memories. That's really what I'm trying to impart.
Yeah, and it's kind of like my favorite teacher that I've shared before on other podcasts is I don't really remember a whole lot of her actual disseminating of information, but I do remember how she made me feel.
Yeah.
And that she made me feel smart. She gave me time. She direct focus, acknowledgement, and she made time, for her students, and so in her conversation and so forth, but in her classroom culture, and
sure.
As a dad, we don't have to take them to Disneyland every day. Mm-mm. And we don't have to, create the most, those are fun, but what they're going to remember is Dad was there.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. So my son, when he was younger, he used to go to a camp. It was a day camp. We dropped him off for it. And he was I can't remember this guy's name, but he was a PE teacher. And he was so frustrated with getting in trouble as a PE teacher because the kid would get hurt. And he's like, it's in PE.
Excuse me, that's physical education,
right.
Sir.
Well, some parent is mad because a kid came home with a hockey puck, bruise on his head. We're playing hockey. Someone's going to get hit in the face. Like, that's part of the deal. And so it's thinking of summer, and when you sign away your kids, it says your kid will get hurt. We don't know how bad.
Basically, yeah.
It's going to happen. And he had this huge trailer full of bikes and football pads and just stuff he's acquired over 10 years of doing this thing. I mean, just archery, everything you can imagine, skates packed. And every day, it's better than Disneyland. And sometimes they never even got to the activity. So I remember in the morning they were going to go kayaking, downtown on the river that goes through Houston. And that afternoon, my son's just covered in mud. He's bloody and everything. And I'm like, what happened, man? He goes, well, we're on our way, but we came across this puddle. And it was like, hey, let's see who can jump across this thing. And that took a couple hours. And then they found a dead alligator. And the guy says, anybody here got a knife? And my son, I had my hunting knife hidden in my backpack. I said, I do. Let's cut this thing open, see what it ate. They cut open a dead alligator. You're talking about a lifetime memory. That's better than Disneyland. Do you know what I mean? For a bunch of boys running around in the dirt, it's awesome, And so, they played paintball, and he had his welts and bruises. Proud of him, Yeah, I cried a little bit, but look, those types of experiences, I think, are critical.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like building capacity in kids, allowing them to, as a parent, sometimes we have to just let it go.
Yeah.
If you were the helicopter parent or the snowplow parent or whatever and clear the way for our kids, then they don't get to experience.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you this, dude, I'm recovering as these called the lawnmower parent, the bulldozer snowplow parent, totally for my girl. Because I saw she's my girl. I don't want to see her hurt. I don't want to see her cry.
Right.
I was the worst. I'm better. But that's the funny thing,
the boys broke you.
Well, here's the thing. I was talking to a guy at a coffee shop the other day. It was when I was hanging out with these men that I hang out with, and this guy had a little girl. They have a boy on the way, and mom was really pregnant. She was about to give birth in the coffee shop, and he says, you know, we're looking forward to it. And I said, well, here's the funny thing, you know, with the girl, just like you are, you know, I'm watching you. You always know where she is. You know, that's the thing. And so I was the same way. You know, I'm just on her, you know, everywhere. I think I'm suspicious of everyone. Everyone's going to get her, you know. But when the boy shows up, you know, and my wife's like, where's Jones? Well, I don't know. I haven't seen him in a couple hours. Yeah, I don't know. The last time I saw him, he was in the backyard yesterday. I don't know where he is. You know, it's such a whole different thing, but I'm better. You know, I'm doing better.
Yeah, that's funny. Mm-hmm. Well, we don't always get it right. Yeah. But we have lots of opportunity to, you know, to fix it. And we tell men, no matter where they're at, whatever life stage they're in, today, start today. You can still make a difference, and you can still make an impact. You know, so to our dads or to our audiences, what would you say? What advice would you give a father that wants to be the dad? To be the one.
Sure. You know, I think just what you said prior to that, our kids are so resilient. They're just amazing, just the human animal, able to completely shift gears in an instant. When they're children. Adults have a lot harder time with change and that. But what I do know is this, is you can walk in today, just like I would do in a classroom. I can walk into a classroom I've never been in, and I can flip that thing immediately, within seconds. I know that is possible with relationships with kids, even if you have been distant, even if you haven't been what you think might be as an integral part of their life as you hope you would have been. Even today, all that can change without fear, without regret, without feelings of guilt or shame. It all can happen today. And if it were me, and if I was starting from scratch, I know best, based on all my mistakes and things I've done right, things I've done wrong, is just getting clear about who I want to be for my kids. Like that alone, taking that step, making a list, getting a Google core values, and start picking, okay, I want to be, like for me, a big one is courageous. I want my kids to see that. What does that look like? How does someone who's courageous, full of courage, how do they live their life? You know, and the question is, maybe that's not who I am, but I want that for my kids. Well, how do I become that? Look, man, all you have to do is you have to give away all that you want in your life. So if I want to be courageous, I have to encourage enough other people, and then I become courageous. Like that's the thing about these qualities of character. You can't fake it till you make it doesn't work. You can't go buy this off the shelf somewhere. Right. You can't go to counseling. Right. You can't do life coaching. What it is you give to others what you want to become. It's easy as that. And the beautiful thing is we have that built in to our role as a dad. Those are your kids. Encourage your kids so you become courageous. Now they can see it so they can be it. I show it so I can grow it in that kid. Confidence, whatever it is, purpose, charity, empathy, whatever that is, we give it away to our kids. We become it. They see it so they can be it. I show it so I can grow it. And now we're in this positive cycle of parenting in a positive, beautiful, strong, masculine way.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's great. And, being courageous is not necessarily, running into a burning building.
No, being courageous is looking at your kid in your eye and say, hey, listen, man, I really feel like I let you down the last couple of years. I'm going to step it up. It starts today, and watch. You're going to love it. Man. And that, I don't know, I think that message right there is so essential for our listeners to hear, especially dads, men, if you're in a place where you feel like you've gone too far. Yeah.
So
I don't think it's ever too far. It's all recoverable. All of it. You know what it is? I think maybe it's because I've been in so many situations with so many kids where I've seen a dad come back in their life, a dad that has been distanced or went to prison or has just been alienated because of a relationship with the spouse or just so many reasons. Some their own fault, some not. But you know what? I can't tell you I don't know what it looked like when the dad was looking into the eyes of their child, apologizing and owning it and say, that is then, this is now, it all changes today. I love you. I am here for you. I am your dad. I'm going to step up. I don't know, the kid might have rolled their eyes, refused to look at him. It doesn't matter, because I know what I saw in the classroom the next day. The kid telling everybody, overjoyed to be with their dad.
Yeah.
He's back. Yeah. That's what I know.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing is, it's getting to the place where you don't need to see the result. Like not being attached to the outcome. I don't need it to be a positive experience right now. Because I know who I am. I did the work. I know my values. I know I've listed it all out. Here's the first step. And there it is. And then we go to the second step. Just getting started.
Well, dads listening today, it's never too late to be the one. Be the one. Dads, be the one starting today. Al, man, I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Every time, we have spoken so many times. I've heard you speak so many times, and I learn something new from you every time we get together, and I so value our friendship, and you're my brother, and I love you, and I want to thank you for being the dad God has called you to be.
I appreciate it, man. Isn't it interesting how, like, even just now as we wrap up, it feels like we even just barely scratched the surface.
Oh, I know. Well, this may be just part one.
Right.
Part one. Dad,
right.
Be the one.
Thank you, brother. Love you.
Love you.
Wasn't that powerful? The words that Jeff and Hal spoke with each other, they're resonating with me. And I know that they're resonating with you. I know that your heart has been touched because of the things that you heard and learned today. And honestly, man, wasn't that good? If you have any questions regarding today's podcast, I would love to connect with you and to dialogue with you about how we can further take that conversation further. You can email me, seth@suitupministries.org. I would love to get to know you better and to just answer any questions you had about being the dad that God has called you to be. Thank you again for joining us for the Dad Deep Dive podcast. We'll see you on the next one.